Hey, this is Pastor Ryan. Thanks for joining us for Step One. This week's passage is Psalm 39, verses 1 through 13. Step One is a resource to help aid in your inductive Bible study. It's a journey through the observation step. Before watching the rest of this video, read through the passage and list some observations you think may be important to understanding it. Let's get right into Psalm 39. First, we see the immediate audience is Jeduthun, who was the choir master, and the author, David. With 8 first-person pronouns, we see a personal narrative describing how he would guard, used twice in the first verse, his ways. The purpose of this guarding is so he would not sin, specifically with his tongue, guarding his mouth with a muzzle, so long as the wicked were in his presence. With 3 more personal pronouns, he continues his story, describing past events, saying he was both mute and silent, describing a third time how he held his peace, but was not successful, and his distress grew worse, twice informing the reader of his failed efforts. Instead of reducing his stress, he uses 5 more personal pronouns to describe how his heart became hot within him. As he mused, the fire burned. It was at this point that he spoke, breaking his prior silence with his tongue. In this word picture, David uses 2 words related to heat. So we see David trying to keep silent, but it ended up he couldn't stay silent. Moving on, we see him turning to the Lord, continuing with 5 more personal pronouns. The desire was for knowledge, a word used twice here, to know his end. Second, the measure of his days, and finally, to know how fleeting was his life. He starts off with a question, but then quickly proceeds to answer, calling people for attention, describing how the Lord, using a direct second personal reference, made his days only a few handbreadths, describing his lifetime as nothing before the Lord. He describes with confidence, using the word surely, how all mankind stands as a mere breath, saying again, surely a man goes about as a shadow, and surely it was for nothing. Mankind is in turmoil. Again, generally applying the principle, we may heap up wealth, but we do not know who will gather it. A third description of the brevity of life and of life's futility. So he says his life is brief and in itself is pointless. He continues, asking the Lord a direct question. He gives a quick answer, saying his hope is in the Lord. Here again we see David speaking to the Lord in the second person, requesting first to deliver him, using 3 personal pronouns, focusing on his own life, from all his transgressions, asking the Lord to not make him the scorn of the fool, describing both an internal request about his transgressions and an external aim, the scorn of the fool. He continues his response in the first person, saying he was mute, that he did not open his mouth, and he describes the reason for this silence. It was the Lord himself who had placed him in this situation, describing it generally as it. He speaks directly to the Lord with 4 second-person pronouns, with a third request asking him to remove his stroke from him, describing his present situation as one who was spent by the hostility of his hand, describing his situation as discipline, and a 5th time as a rebuke for sin. What was the goal of this activity? He compares God's activity to a moth's consumption. God, through this discipline process, is consuming what was dear to the sinner. Here, God was removing what was dear to David's life. He finishes with a comparison, for the second time describing life as a mere breath. So David says his hope is in the Lord, even though his pain is the result of God's discipline. He finishes the psalm with personal statements using a final 7 personal pronouns, praying to the Lord directly to hear his cry and to give ear to his cry, requesting the Lord would not hold his peace at his tears. There are 3 descriptions of this communication, as a prayer, as a cry, being with tears, describing himself first as a sojourner with the Lord, connected only to God, emphasizing how he is foreign and isolated in his present context. Secondly, describing himself as a guest, like all of his fathers, asking the Lord to look away from him. The purpose of the Lord's looking away was so that it would be possible for him to smile again before he would depart and would be no more. So he asks the Lord to shorten his discipline, So broadly speaking, he wasn't going to say anything, but life is short. He understands the need for this discipline and was patiently going to wait for the Lord to complete it, but he pleads for the Lord to make this discipline shorter. And that's step 1 for Psalm 39, verses 1 through 13. We'd encourage you to continue your step 1 journey on your own. What observations do you see in the text? What's an important observation you think we missed in today's video? You're encouraged to use the life group notes to continue your Bible study journey this week. We're looking forward to processing our Bible study journeys together this Sunday at Louisville Evangelical Free Church. We hope to see you then.